Hi, Force Perspective. You know, you'd think being adrift in space would be terrifying. And you'd be right. Today we'll be taking a look at Voidship: The Long Journey, a space exploration and combat game where you travel between systems, collecting resources, building upon and improving your ship, managing your crew, and dealing with hostile forces in real-time combat, all in hopes of keeping your people safe and eventually completing your mission. So yeah, it's FTL, but Voidship is different enough to still be interesting. Building a ship for modules, action-focused combat, and there's never enough space games, so can this game surpass its master? No, but does it work in its own right? It's getting better. Ooh. After the destruction of the Terran Empire as a result of creating the AI Atom, the only surviving battleship and its stalwart crew boldly navigate through the depths of space and, after mourning the death of their captain, an engineer, and weapons officer, they discover a transmission from Atom telling them to explore certain star systems in order to discover the secret of how to rebuild the shattered remnants. How? So the first thing I think we should talk about is the navigation screens, and what makes up half of these, the star map portion, is largely just a way to force time to pass and kill off crew members. You just click a star system and wait. So I'll be focusing on the in-system tile map where, well, technically your crew can die here too, but it's not the only thing that happens. This tile map is where the meat of your interaction with the world takes place. Your universe, in this case. The way it works is, when you travel to any adjacent square, an event will pop up, ranging from enemy ships to complete empty space. And not very much in between. There are others, for instance this destroyed alien city, and there are variations on enemy encounters, it's just not as many as you'd expect. Or I would go as far as to say need. There's not much interaction here in the first place, with some of the events just being dialogue windows with zero choices to make, and even the ones that do give you options to choose from aren't very impactful. I was never invested in what would happen, and the most it'll affect your game is getting you some resources, maybe a new crew member, with the only reason being to get the latter because you want to reserve to replace your soon-to-be dead current crew, because who's on your crew doesn't really matter. A good crew member's a bonus, sure, but they don't affect the game enough to give them any amount of attention. The nitty-gritty of it is, the navigation portion of Voidship: The Long Journey failed to grab my attention at first, and only got less interesting with time. It's really just a medium to get you to fights. Through it, you're given some control over whether or not you want to take those fights, but regardless of what you want, you're going to end up spending most of your time in combat. And that being the case, the most important thing you're going to be doing on this screen is building your ship, which isn't surprising considering that's the most advertised feature. The way the shipbuilding is done is you add these modules to your ship, be it turrets, engines, cannons. There's a number of different parts. Most of them you have to discover as you go, but even the starting options are fair. You, for some reason, don't know how the gun your ship already has installed works. Oh right, he died. But you can make something work. Honestly, all you really need is a bunch of your favorite guns and enough engines to compensate for the added weight. And that's not just true early on, that advice carries over to the late game too. Unfortunately, I'm still not convinced that the utility of other systems like shields or auto repairers or anything other than bigger guns and better engines outweighs the loss of kill potential. You need that extra damage and maneuverability due to the way combat functions. Don't get me wrong, the different control methods, be it the RTS style or shooter mode, when combined with the ability to pause at any time, to inspect ship statuses and help with targeting specific sections, all of that comes together and works really well. I would have liked the ability to independently choose targets for each of my weapons, and as far as that goes, targeting can be kind of finicky altogether. But I see a lot of potential here, and half of it's realized. Unfortunately, so are the frames. The frames are also half realized. If you don't understand what I'm saying, it's locked at 30, and I hate it! It makes me motion sick, and I'm always going to be a little bitter about that. But there's a bigger problem that needs to be discussed, and that comes up once you realize what you're going to be doing in every fight without fail. No matter what control method you choose, no matter how you want to play, you're going to end up flying around a big circle, waiting for everybody to die. And I mean all of them. You need to destroy every single ship every single time. There are no alternatives. You can't negotiate, you can't disable ships to escape. In fact, you can't escape at all. You are locked in an arena until the job is done, and the sheer quantity of small ships buzzing around means that can take a while. Even worse if you find yourself in a fight you can't win, because although you could technically reload, the problem with that is the game saves at every encounter, so if there isn't an option to avoid them, or if there is an option but it fails, then you're stuck. You have no choice but either wait to die and be reset back at the beginning of the system, or start a whole new game, because it treats the save files as if it were a roguelike, despite not being one. There's a random nature to it, and maybe you could call that a rogue-lite element, but I don't believe it's worth dying for. And the thing is, I wouldn't be near as harsh about this if the enemy variety was able to keep these arena fights engaging for more than a couple hours. The number of ship types isn't bad. There are 3 factions each with about 5 different smaller ship types and a few bigger ships that use the same modular system your ship is made with, but all of the smaller ones pretty much feel the same. Some are more dangerous than others, some have beam weapons, some have ion bombs that drain your systems, and some ram into you mercilessly because they're massive dickwads, but that doesn't change how you deal with them. I earnestly wanted to like this combat, but when the only real change you see from beginning to end is an increased number of ships and how much damage is done, it just gets stale. And that's kind of it. That's what Voidship: The Long Journey is. It's a game with a good foundation, but it's content light. Now, I can't say I've come across absolutely everything in the game. As far as that goes, I never mentioned the little tradition boost until now. They're very forgettable. But I think the important thing to know is, if there are any little bits hidden away that I didn't discover, I don't care. There's no desire for me to keep playing through the same content that got boring halfway through my first 4-hour run in hopes of seeing maybe one new thing. The events are dull, crew management's largely useless, the combat's repetitive, and a little roguelite randomness doesn't deepen the shallow pool. Also, going full screen makes everything go dark. Well, that's disappointing. Wait, how am I talking?